Hi, I'm here at Gsoft offices with
Niaulin.
Ben, and Ben is the SharePoint MVP. And is your renewal cycle July 1st as well?
Actually, it's in April, and I switched to Office 365 MVP to go with the trends, obviously, in the last April, actually.
So Ben, obviously, you being most known in the community for the migration, right? You do a lot of talks around the migration and stuff. I wanted to really tap into your brain around some of the migration things. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of ask you a couple of questions that will help the audience to get to know you better. Okay. What do you think about that?
Sounds good.
I promise not to, ask anything revealing.
That's a good thing.
Unless you want to reveal anything.
I think I'm pretty good for now, yeah.
So, elevator or escalator?
I'd say escalator.
Coffee or beer?
Depends on the time of day, so I would say I'll have to go with beer.
I knew it. Somehow I knew that. Lunch at the lunchroom or park?
I would say park.
Cool. All right. Instagram or Twitter?
Oh, Twitter.
Dentist or annual review?
Oh, two great ones there. I would say, since I haven't seen a dentist in a while, I would say then the review.
Annual review. Friday night or Sunday morning?
Sunday morning, bacon.
And the last one, OneNote or Notepad? You're looking at me like it's a tricky question.
It's a tricky question. I'm going to have to choose Notepad.
I totally agree. Totally, good choice. I have a couple of questions that I think might be interesting for people. And first one, here's a situational question. So I'm on SharePoint 2007. Should I do 2010 hop or use a tool to migrate to 2013?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. Now we're talking about going from 2007, which, I just came back from conferences actually yesterday, and you realize that there's a lot of people still on 2007. So if you are on 2007, don't worry. There's still many others like you. And whether you should go through the migration of 2010 or go straight to 2013 using tools, of course, it may sound a little biased since ShareGate does migration and management altogether, but
it is a little biased.
It is a little biased, but
it's okay.
I would tell you to skip the 2010 because just the headache of going through 2007 to 2010, the planning, the possible problems that you can get with that, things that won't work that you'll have to fix, and you'll have to go through all of that, and you're not even staying there. You'll have to do the same thing again to go to 2013. So I don't find in terms of times, the cost that is around that migration is a good idea. You might as well spend for a tool like ShareGate, obviously, and do the hop for an affordable price. That's not the amount of developer hours, rebuilding the source codes and solutions and master pages twice. And no, definitely would skip and go directly to 2013.
Cool. Okay, good suggestion. So next one. So let's say I'm doing new development in my old SharePoint 2007 or 2010 environment on a continuous basis. So things are enhancements are being created as I go. What's the best strategy to migrate if you have continuous enhancements development?
Well, that's a very tough question. I'm not a developer myself, but always basically be aware of what's going on. Microsoft is changing a lot of things in terms of Office 365 and even SharePoint 2016 coming forward. So the idea is to really focus on that, from what I hear from my developers, as much as possible on the client-side solutions, because a lot more is going that way, and you want to be able to migrate easily for the next possible... What am I going to say here? The next possible version there, you want to be able to understand what's going on there so that your code can easily be migrated to the next.
Cool. Any recommendations from a process standpoint? So let's say as things are happening, like let's say I'm embarking on a migration, and then, but I still, there's still new things going into the old environment, already old environment. Any recommendations on a process in that situation?
Yeah, sure. There's many different ways. So there isn't a magic button that I can tell you about. Migrations are...
Oh, man.
They're different.
I came for the magic button.
It's actually... No. There's many different ways to do this. And some people have different... SharePoint is all about platform. And some people build it in some way, some people have built it another way. One strategy that I like to use is one that we've implemented here ourselves. It's called RMR. And what it is remove, migrate, or rebuild. And what we do is we've learned a lot from the agile development methodology by basically trying to see what we need to do, sort of an inventory. You have to have an inventory. You want to know what you have everywhere. Is it you have sites, you have code on it, you have content editor web parts with HTML, all these stuff, you want to have an inventory. And then you want to assign points to what you think the effort is to either remove that thing, to migrate that thing, or to rebuild that thing because it's changed in 2013. And then with the velocity of the team that you have to do the migration, you say, well, we can do 30 points in 2 weeks. So you go see the product owner or the person in charge, the VP or whoever wants to do the migration, and you show them all of this and you say, look, our team can do 30 points a week. Which one do you want and what priority? And we kind of go through that. But of course, it varies depending on the project.
Gotcha. Some good tips. So speaking of good tips, what's the worst migration you have ever seen, if you can share?
I can share. I obviously will not share more details, but we've seen a couple of things that are interesting. First, one SharePoint farm per department. So migrating multiple farms into one. So this was definitely an interesting one. The second thing is an entire intranet, so sales, HR, marketing, resources, the entire intranet built under the central administration. So that came with a world of interesting things because migrations usually we're used to, in terms of tools, in terms of what you got to support, we're used to the typical one side to the other side. But when you're built under the central administration, all of a sudden it doesn't work the same way. So that was interesting as well. So
I hope not too many of these.
Not too many, and I hope not more.
Could have been worse, John. A lot worse.
Here's a tricky question. How much time for, let's say it'll take to migrate 1 gigabyte of data from on-prem to Office 365?
That's another great question because...
I know, I wrote it myself.
Yeah. Oh, this guy. No wonder you got renewed. No, so honestly, if you had asked me the question before the Ignite conference that Microsoft held, I would have told you probably a gig of data, depending on if it has version history, whether it has a lot of metadata, does it have a lot of custom permissions, because a lot of things will vary the speed. Right? Is it just a bunch of large documents? If you have 2 documents of 500 megabytes, 1 gig is pretty quick. But if you have a lot of 10 kilobyte documents with a lot of version history, a lot of metadata, a lot of things that we have to recreate for Office 365, it'll be a lot slower. So there's certain aspects that it's hard to say. And Microsoft historically has put some throttling on that migrations. Because not just because of migration, but a lot of tools out there, whether it was backup tools, synchronization tools, tend to slow down the Microsoft servers. So they said, you know what, we're going to have to limit what these tools are doing. So the speed could go only to 500 megs to 750 megs an hour, give or take, right, based on what I said. But at Ignite, and we've been working with Microsoft on their NDA for a long time before Ignite, to help them work on that new migration API, which is not unlike the old content deployment APIs that you had before. It's just what happens now is the documents, instead of going from on-prem straight to Office 365, we create a package, and I say we, it doesn't mean ShareGate. You can do that yourself, but it comes with limitations. Right. And the package copies all of the content a lot faster to Azure. So you do need an Azure account, right? A storage account. So because it goes to Azure, there's no throttling. So we're seeing speeds with 35 gigs an hour now going to Office 365 because we push the content to Azure, and then Microsoft has a schedule that looks at your package, see how you've built it, and then puts it in the right location in your tenant. So very, very much more increased speeds, which allows us to bring a lot larger organizations that have gigs and maybe terabytes of data from on-prem or file shares into Office 365.
And that's available with ShareGate tool as well?
Of course, yeah, because obviously the API has a lot of limitations still. It's new. It doesn't do certain things. So what we do is we combine the regular API calls that we used to do, and I know it's technical, but basically we put a little bit of ShareGate, we put a little bit of Microsoft API, and we get the entire migration solution happen.
So speaking of, you mentioned some of the considerations in terms of migration to Office 365. Anything else that you want to mention in terms of people getting ready to do Office 365 migration? Any other key considerations such as speed, customizations, anything else?
My recommendation right away is stop thinking just about taking your SharePoint on-prem and bringing it to Office 365, but rethink the whole solution. Your migration should be, am I taking my team sites and turning them into groups for Office 365? Or some of them yes, some of them no. So reevaluate that whole thing to go. And then afterwards, in terms of the migration itself, it's pretty straightforward, but definitely your custom solutions and your branding, forget it, it's gone. Whatever branding you've done, unless you're already on 2013, it's gone. You've got to redo your branding, and it works completely differently in Office 365. So definitely have to worry about it. I think you did some pretty funny, scary video on that.
I did.
So check that out as well. But some fun things to look at. And then your custom solutions, forget it. I mean, what you can do on-prem, most of the time you cannot do on Office 365. Or you'll have to think about it differently once again in terms of add-ins, what used to be called apps.
Yeah, when did that change?
Ignite? That was around Ignite. Or
was it Ignite? I must have been living under a rock because I checked my Twitter like I don't know, like a month ago or something, or a few weeks ago, and I'm like, oh, these are called add-ins now?
That's right. I think it was around Build, right before Ignite, and they decided that, and Jeremy Fake from the Microsoft team, he put a big blog post that explained what happens and where does it change from add-in to apps, or from apps to add-in rather. See, I'm getting confused now. But yeah, they definitely changed the word because you already are downloading the Word app now. So if you build an app in Word, what is that, an app of an app? Or so possibly makes more sense to have an add-in in Office 365 and Word Online. And so that's changed for sure. You'll have to look at your development story, but do expect to lose that. And that's why in some cases, a hybrid approach might also be a great solution to keep certain stuff on premises that you can't migrate because you need absolutely that custom solution, and for some reason it can't be rebuilt yet. And then the rest of the things that you want on the cloud in Office 365.
Sweet, awesome. Hey, do you guys see a lot of Google Drive migrations at all?
Yeah, we actually do. We're getting a lot of requests for it, and we're definitely looking at it. There's people trying to... The thing about the Google Drive to OneDrive for Business, which is typically, because it's that size company usually that's going to OneDrive for Business or just regular team sites from Google Drive. And there's also the file format to take into consideration, because Google Docs allows you to create not Word documents, they can be opened by Word, but they're that other format that Google has. So they're Google Excel sheets, Google Word documents. They're not Microsoft Word. They don't have the same extension. And so you can't just migrate. You can't just copy the files. Otherwise, it'd be a very much simpler migration. But you also have to look at the file format. So for what people don't realize at all is that the content is owned by the person that created the document, so the author. If you delete that user through the migration, you decide that you no longer need that group of person, you're doing a phased migration. If you delete a user, every piece of content that user has ever created disappears with the user. It's not in the drive like we're used to in SharePoint, in OneDrive for Business, where somebody leaves, the documents are still there. With Google Drive, everything goes with the person. We actually lived that here back in the days when we had Google Drive as well, and you just lose all the content.
Wow.
Yeah, scary.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm glad I asked that question. So I'll take the credit for it. So as a developer, what should I stay away from to reduce my pain during the migration in on-prem environment?
Should tell you that the system is going to be compiling for 18 to 20 minutes. So some of the minor systems, they might go on or off for a while, but it's nothing to worry about. It's just a simple thing.
Obviously, the full trust solutions that only happen on the server. I guess my tip, what we see is try to code for Office 365 even though you're on premises. I see you work with a lot of developers here as well and try to see what they're doing on a regular basis. And I would tell you, try to see if there isn't something already available that you can leverage. Do you really need to build a new custom-made slider?
I do. I really do.
Or can you build it with search-driven, content search, web part, search results, and just a display template? So try to focus on client-side solutions as much as possible, built-in solutions with search, if at all possible, because everything is going towards search-driven solutions, reusable. So that's a big thing. But yes, try to stay away from full trust if you can. No, it's not always possible, but if you can, definitely something to stay away from.
So, and one last question, which is kind of like, again, kind of more summarizing. So looking at all of these migrations, right, that you're seeing, what are some of the most common wrong assumptions about SharePoint migration that you see over and over again? People have this assumption is like, oh, well, it's just a file copy. What are some of the other kind of bad assumptions that people make?
Honestly, the thing you just said it's the biggest one is people take the file share, bring it into SharePoint, and even worse, I've seen now it's a new challenge is that whole OneDrive for Business story that people completely don't understand. That's why I've been talking about it a lot on my blogs. And people migrating to OneDrive for Business, which to me doesn't really make any sense, unless you're migrating your individual users' home folders. Okay, but they're talking about their file shares, the marketing, the finance folders, and they're bringing them into OneDrive for Business, which to me doesn't make any sense because OneDrive for Business is for individual users. It's like your new My Documents version, cloud version 2016, whatever. So to say that you're going to take the finance folder and bring it into Jonathan's My Documents in OneDrive for Business doesn't make sense. So we're getting a lot of calls and people are not understanding, and I understand because there's a lot of confusion with the brand, but OneDrive for Business is a personal file experience, right? It's not team sites. And even then what I'm seeing is take your file share and then put it in a team site with no metadata, and you don't have to organize necessarily with metadata. There's other ways to do it. There's something in search called entity extraction. And I know it sounds geeky and weird.
It does.
It allows you to go inside of a document, the search goes in a document and picks up word that you've identified and will automatically tag them. So you can remove some of the metadata that people have to enter manually and have it be done automatically.
We've covered a lot of ground and a lot of really good tips. So I'll post a lot of these kind of as a subtitles, and which you're probably seeing already. Subtitles. But so Ben, I wanted to thank you for your time, and and kind of since I come from BC, I wanted to bring you something very unique to BC as a gift, very unique to BC, and it's a limited edition granola.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. It's kind of our thing.
What is this exactly?
In British well.
So it's even in French. Very nice.
Yeah, it's well. See, what happened is we're gonna bring you a limited edition British Columbia special brownies.
Special brownies.
but we had a little bit of a problem at the airport.
I would assume so.
So we had to settle for
pumpkin granola bars. Thank you.
You're welcome.